What's up, guys? My name is Hutch, and I make videos and put them on the internet, and this is another episode of Pine Park Movie Talk. So far, we have discussed best films to watch while high and best directors to watch while high. If you haven't seen the previous videos, I'd highly recommend checking them out. Links, as always, will be in the description below. I'm holding my vape again. Once again, if you have any suggestions for future topics, or if you think of other movies that you'd add to today's list, drop a comment below and I'll have a look. All right, so let's get into today's list. I have all kinds of ideas for top 5 lists, and I welcome your suggestions as well. But one that's super interesting to me is a discussion about what are some of the worst movies to watch while high. But I need to add a disclaimer at the front here. It's really important that you guys understand that I love every single film on this list. All of them are great. This list is not meant to disparage them in any way, but the thought of getting stupid high and watching these movies, to me, is quite the gamble. I don't know about you guys, but when I get high, I'm way more vulnerable to negative emotions. I'm able to empathize with other people's experiences a lot easier. So if I'm watching a character suffer or go through something awful on screen, it's not hard for me to imagine what that must feel like. My imagination runs wild, and before long, I'm in a spiral. Another reason why a film might be difficult to watch if you're high is that they're already confusing as fuck if you're totally sober. So how's that gonna work out for you after a couple rips of Chem Driver? For these reasons and others that we'll get into shortly, I personally would not recommend watching the following films while you're high. First up, let's talk about Tenet. So let me just reiterate that I really enjoyed Tenet, despite not having Hans Zimmer scoring the film for the first time in forever. Christopher Nolan chose Ludwig Göransson, and man, did he deliver a solid soundtrack. The soundtrack to this movie is phenomenal, and even though I'm discouraging you from watching Tenet while high, listening to the music from this film is another discussion entirely. It's great. So Tenet is widely regarded as one of Nolan's worst movies, but to be clear, I don't think he's ever technically missed. When you have a body of work as impressive as Nolan's, it's easy to dismiss a 7 or an 8 out of 10 movie because it's not up to the standards of his previous work. But Tenet is good. I'd even say it's very good, but Jesus, it's fucking complicated. I needed to watch 4 or 5 explainer videos on YouTube before I finally felt like I had a grasp on what I had just watched. And even then, I'd be lying if I said I understood everything that's going on in this movie. I couldn't really tell you what was going on. The way Nolan plays with time, folds the story backwards onto itself, then forwards again, then backwards again. There's no way that any of you guys are gonna be able to follow what's happening in this movie if you're high. That would be just a rare kind of genius, and obviously I'm not that guy, so. Let's talk about Darren Aronofsky's Requiem for a Dream. I really don't think this one needs too much explaining. If you've heard of or seen this film, it's a story about the various ways that addiction can wreak havoc in someone's life, with various characters whose lives all intersect in dark and sometimes truly horrific ways, culminating in one of the most fucked up endings of a film that I have ever seen. It is relentless, it is brutal, it's great, let's not get it twisted, but maybe don't spark up before you watch this film. It will take you to a very, very bad place. It is haunting. I really want to emphasize once again that I love this next movie a lot. I usually watch it every October with my fiance because we do a horror-themed movie month in the house of Hutch and Esme. I'm talking about a movie called The Descent. I saw this movie many, many moons ago in a theater with my pal Marty, and neither one of us had any idea what it was about. I hadn't even seen a trailer, and I recommend that you all do the same if you've never heard of it without giving too much away. It's a story about a horrible tragedy, devastating loss, unimaginable grief, and being tested beyond the limits of what humans are capable of in order to deal with that grief and persevere in spite of it. It's a masterpiece in my opinion, but it's shockingly violent at times, and the lead character goes through so much violence and pain that it can be quite difficult to watch at times. To this day, and having seen it multiple times, there are more than a few scenes where my body just completely tenses up. I have a whole thing with seeing broken bones because I had a really bad arm injury when I was a kid, and there's one scene in this movie that makes me want to vomit every time I see it. Again, it's a great flick, but maybe it just doesn't pair well with cannabis. The next film that you should never, under any circumstances, ever watch while you're high is called Waves, and it's a more recent flick. Waves is a movie that I really didn't know much about before I saw it. Me and Esme saw a thumbnail on Amazon Videos, watched the trailer that thankfully didn't give too much away, and jumped in wholly unprepared for the deeply emotional experience that we were heading into. The film was broken up into 2 parts. The first following a high school athlete aspiring to greatness, battling all kinds of personal demons, who ultimately makes a terrible decision that will negatively impact the lives of basically everyone around him. And the second part follows his sister left to try and pick up the pieces of her own life, not really understanding where to go from there. It's thoroughly, totally anxiety-inducing for the first half, but I promise you that the movie will help you put the pieces back together by the end. It is intense, challenging, and ultimately beautiful. It's a wonderful film, but if you watch it high, I cannot guarantee your emotional safety. Just be careful and prepare for tears, lots and lots of emotional pain and tears. I'll admit that I'm somewhat torn about this last one. I think for most people, it's a horrible idea to watch it while you're high, but for some select group of absolute psychos, it may be a really incredible experience. And really that applies to every film that I've mentioned so far. Some of you guys are watching this video, or who are watching this video may probably love watching these movies after smoking weed, though I suspect you're in the minority and I salute your tenacity. So let's talk about Mitsumar. Ari Aster has only directed a couple major feature films so far, but in my mind, he's already established himself as one of the most interesting and unique filmmakers alive today. Before Mitsumar, he directed Hereditary, and honestly, they're interchangeable for the purposes of this discussion. So what makes Mitsumar so difficult to watch? Well, I'm not gonna spoil this film for anyone who hasn't seen it, so I don't wanna get into too many details, but what I will say is that you'll understand the reason why I'm advising caution within the first 5 minutes. It is horrifying in a way that very, very few films could replicate, and it takes place in Sweden during a time of year when it never gets dark, which is just not something that you'd expect from a psychological horror film, and yet it works brilliantly in this setting. It's colorful, beautiful, vibrant, with a truly haunting yet absolutely gorgeous soundtrack. It's one of my favorite horror films of all time. Watch this movie, watch it today, but just know that if you get high before doing so, you are rolling the dice. It could go either way. You could have a really good time with it, and you just may end up on the floor, curled in a fetal position, asking your friend to take you to the ER. We've all had a friend do that, right? I mean, all right, pals, that's gonna do it for me. Once again, if you enjoyed the video, maybe consider dropping a like and subscribing with the bell notification clicked so you never miss a video. You can find me on Twitter at Hutchinson. I'm Hutch on Twitch. Take it easy, and definitely heed my warnings about these movies. They do not fuck around. See you guys later.